Welcome to today's event, the latest in Transportation Insights Digital Master Series. We're going to be taking another in-depth look at the revolution emerging around buy online, pick up in store. This holiday season, it's certainly playing a vital role. It's improving customer experience, and when it's managed correctly, it can reduce transportation costs significantly. I'm Michael Willard on the marketing team at Transportation Insight, and we've invited some of our supply chain masters to join us today. Before we turn it over to our experts, I want to remind our audience that we welcome your participation. Please submit your questions to our panelists through the GoToWebinar questions panel. We'll address questions at the conclusion of our presentation. Also, a quick invitation to our audience, our next Supply Chain Master Series events coming up Thursday, November 5th. Join our parcel experts. They'll be sharing their insight on the 2021 rate increase from FedEx and UPS. Register for that roundtable today for our exclusive analysis of this year's GRI, how it's going to affect your transportation cost. Of course, the parcel transportation piece is a big part of today's conversation, which I'm going to now hand over to John Richardson. John has more than 20 years of experience working across multiple industries. He's been a logistics planner for Walmart, a senior manager for Chainalytics, and he's operated his own supply chain consultancy. John's Transportation Insights Vice President of Supply Chain Consulting. He's our moderator for today's event, which will continue with an induction of our panel. John?
Hey, thanks, Michael. We're fortunate to have a lot of experience here at TI, and I'll start by introducing our Chief Commercial Officer, Carl Fowler. He's got more than 20 years of experience in global supply chain management and really specializes in strategic planning and global logistics and distribution. Carl?
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to join you today. We're excited about the content that we've prepared. This is kind of the second edition, and we really want to give everybody a more in-depth, more how-to walk on buy online, pick up in store. As John and Michael alluded to, I've had the good fortune of supporting retail and manufacturers and shippers all over the world. And based on what we can see, given our 750 plus customers, we're excited to share some insights that we've gleaned as a panel and as an organization on how you can make this program and this type of concept work for you.
Cool, thanks, Carl. Second up, Charles Moore. He's part of our parcel team with really deep experience in the parcel space, more than 25 years. He's our Vice President of Parcel Solutions and has a unique perspective on protecting the customer experience. Charles?
Thanks, John. You know, shippers are facing a parcel environment like they've never seen. You know, between added cost, capacity challenges, and service issues, you know, risk is everywhere. And, you know, I've been really fortunate during my career. I've had the pleasure of assisting retailers, you know, to understand that the supply chain as a function, you know, really should not only align with a company's broader strategy, but should really help facilitate and enhance the seamless buying experience that consumers have come to demand. You know, consumers now expect greater convenience and control in terms of how and when and where purchase or delivery will occur. And the supply chain is no longer just an operational function, but it's definitely, you know, it can be a competitive differentiator, a strategic advantage, and a brand extension.
Well, thanks, Charles. And last but certainly not least, Sachin Verma. He's our Senior Director of Analytics and Strategy, and it brings also 2 decades of experience solving complex business challenges. Sachin?
Thank you, John. Yeah, so with COVID coming in last 1 year, it has changed the perspective of how business has to evolve. So e-commerce, which was kind of growing at a slow pace, has now shifted at a very rapid pace, and that does require us to every company to look into their supply chain differently. And on top of that, with the new advances in the technologies and supply chain infrastructure, it is very important to have a great partner with you to see how they can help you and take you through the journey. So I'm happy to be part of this discussion and share with you guys how our technology and our experts can help you out building a strong BOPIS strategy for your business.
Thanks, Sachin. You know, for everyone in the audience kind of wondering, why are we talking about this again? We just had a webinar about a month ago talking about a lot of the why around a buy online, pick up in store strategy. We received a lot of feedback from our last event, and folks asked us to go a little bit deeper into it. So we talked about the why last time, and I'm going to kick it to Carl to kind of frame up what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Thanks, John, and thanks to the panel for their participation today. You know, Sachin, Charles, and John both talk about the change and the growth in e-com. And when you read the news or any of the trade journals or business rags, you hear those words a lot: change, disruption, uncertainty. And really, I think that we need to reframe as a supply chain community the way that we view what's going on right now and the role that supply chain plays. So I don't think disruption is really the banner that we need to work under together in those symbiotic partnerships that we work so hard to build across our partner networks. It's really an evolution. So while COVID has certainly caused disruption across the global supply chain and the global economy, what we're seeing emerge in trends and behaviors is an evolution of the customer behavior. And as a result, the supply chains that have been carefully crafted based on known and predictive demand cycles need to evolve to match the evolution of that client behavior. And what we're seeing is an opening up of new ways of moving products into the hands of that final customer, that final consumer of that product. And as we think about that in terms of the evolution, it's important not just for education of us, the supply chain community, but also all the entities that plug into it as we take the necessary steps to self-educate, to realize what's happening around us, to make sure that we can take the proper steps of clicking together the right solutions to allow organizations, entities, companies to not only survive, but thrive in this environment. So it absolutely is a shift. So the last series we had was really around the awareness of and why it's important and the benefits that entities, companies are seeing from leveraging a new sales or distribution or customer experience channel, this buy online, pick up in store concept. And there's lots of flavors of that. And we talked about the rationale, the reasons, and the potential positive impact, and some of the risks of not getting it wiretight when working to move into this customer experience channel. So the feedback we were getting was for a more in-depth, a little bit more about how to, things that need to be considered so companies can begin to socialize internally and align their supply chain partners to support and enable this concept, this way of moving that material into the final customer's hands in an elegant way that not only protects the experience of the client and engenders brand loyalty, but also moves it in a way that allows for cost protection and margin protection as well. So as we sat down as a team and started looking at the questions and talking about what our clients were asking for as an extension or a continuation of our last discussion, it really centered on, hey, what are the things that an organization needs to think about? What are those critical strategic pillars for a buy online, pick up in store strategy? And how does one go about putting some of those things in place with all of those supply chain partners in their ecosystem? So under that banner of evolution and support, we put together a brief walk and kind of that guide on the critical components, what they mean, how to think about them, and how to start socializing them across the entities in the supply chain. Because it really is going to take those partnerships that have been cultivated and the approach and challenging those a different way to drive the right outcome to enable different customer experience channels like BOPIS. So what we'd like to do is walk you through those pillars and have an open discussion, some back and forth on what we think they mean, how we think they work, and then how a third-party supply chain partner that you've got in your ecosystem can support you in each of these pillars to enable an effective BOPIS plan for your organization. Whether you're a retailer or whether you're a manufacturer or shipper that uses those retail partners as an effective sales channel, the game is evolving around us. So we can see client behavior beginning to emerge, and you don't need to look any further than the capacity constraints placed on small package and the small package providers right now. UPS, FedEx, and a lot of the regional guys, they're facing something they haven't faced before, and that's the prospect of having to reduce the amount of support, how much how much capacity they can provide to their customers to be able to protect the many in their network. Because there's been such an evolutionary shift in the way people buy. And they need help in order to handle the influx of business, just like the retailers and the manufacturers need help with finding new ways that isn't solely dependent on the infrastructure that's there for a certain volume to be able to protect that end customer experience as customer behavior and consumer behavior continues to evolve. So we're going to walk you through some of those critical pillars. We're going to talk again a little bit about what they look like and some really important components of those, and then what you should expect from your partners in your supply chain ecosystem and what you can lean on relative to support from your third-party partner to help you click these things together in an effective way.
Hey, thanks for that tee up, Carl. So here at Transportation Insight, as we think about change, we're pretty big fans of the plan, do, check, act type of approach. And so from a planning perspective, you know, Sachin, what are some of the things that when you're talking to clients that you think they need to think about from a plan perspective as they move toward this?
Sure, John. So I think planning is a big word, right? And for BOPIS or in general in today's ever-changing supply chain, just one plan doesn't help, right? So it's more about coming up with a big long-term plan, but you obviously need to come up with a lot of contingency strategies which are part of your plan, so that if things are changing, then you're ready to take plan B or plan C, right? So if you look in BOPIS, when we have talked to multiple clients of ours and the engagement we are having with them, there are roughly seven components we talk about with our customers. So first one is about SKU strategies. So what kind of products we really want to get into these platforms. And if you look into companies like Lowe's or Walmart, they're very picky on, or very decision made on what kind of SKUs they want to pick, because there are a handful of SKUs that can make a good use in the BOPIS program, and there are others which might not fit into your bucket list. Then comes the second part is about inventory deployment. How you're deploying your inventory in your network is very, very critical, because this whole shift in the paradigm of going to e-commerce is giving a delightful experience to your customers. And the key component over there comes into is how quickly your customer can get a product with a nice experience. At the same time, so you're not getting penalized for keeping too much of inventory. So a concept called as dark stores. So like a lot of retail companies nowadays, many of whose are our customers, they are considering this term called as dark stores. So what they are doing is in their set region, they're picking up these locations which might not be doing very well in their supply chain right now, but they are able to use those as their micro warehouses, so that they can have quick fulfillment centers, act them as a full quick fulfillment centers for their deployment. Then comes freight strategy. Now, this is very, very critical as we have talked to our clients. So pre-COVID, people were having two different sets of businesses. They were running their regular, retail business as is, and then they were working on their e-commerce business, right? Now, post COVID, these things have changed a lot, because a lot of business have moved from, regular traditional method to this e-commerce method, and this requires you to look into how you are moving your product throughout your supply chain. Traditional method, just moving of product through truckload or LTL, may not work very well in these scenarios, because you are trying to be lean and you want to reach to your customers quick, right? So this does require an in-depth freight analysis to understand what strategy is the right strategy, and on top of that, what we can leverage from the evolution in the market, something like Uber concept of freight, how we can leverage, and especially in TI's world, since we are managing business for 700 plus clients, that gives us a leverage to make sure like we can kind of combine different customers to move on the same lanes and help them save on freights. So then comes on to the execution in the last point of contact. So this planning is also very important, because now we are making a customer come into the store and pick a product. So designing things around that is very critical. A lot of our customers have seen that pre-COVID, a lot of the planning of the resources was more about giving on the front end of the store. And now with e-commerce or this BOPIS strategy, you need to put a lot of focus on the backside of your stores as well, where people are very efficient in doing pick and hand over the products to the customer. Then next comes about the distribution strategy. How we want to make a distribution strategy. Does it make sense to have a lot of inventory in the system, or shall we partner with our suppliers to some extent and make sure we can do a drop ship directly into the stores and hand over the products. The end game is to have less touch points from the point of origin to the point of delivery to the customer. And last but not least is about technology, right? Technology is very, very important in this, to have a full visibility in your supply chain as how the product is moving from the point of manufacturing all the way to the point we are handing the product to the customer is the critical part of this strategy. And also it's all about making sure that when the product is especially moving from one point to another point, that we are able to see and provide good estimates to the client, so that when the customer is arriving at the store, they are sure that the product arrives, right? So the key, the main thing over here is, if you connect all these different dots, data is the king in this thing, right? You are talking about data from multiple points, whether it is within your supply chain or through your partners or through your suppliers. Linking those all data points together and coming up with the solution is critical. Now, what is more important on this side is about having an expert partner on your side, right? Because those experts have the knowledge and experience of understanding how all these things work, and they help you avoid all the pitfalls that may cause serious damage to your business if those things are not being considered upfront. Because running these businesses is your one chance to serve your customer, right? One bad execution, it may risk your business.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Carl.
Sachin said a lot there, and his walk is absolutely apropos. The underlying theme, the Japanese have a saying, "Go slow to go fast," and or in the American parlance, measure twice, cut once. But if you build things the way that I do at home, I measure once and cut twice. But when Sachin talks about being purposeful in your planning in all of those areas, I know it sounds daunting, but a 3PL partner and others in your ecosystem have those planning tools and capabilities. They've walked this walk before, and they know what those planning algorithms look like, and they can walk side by side with you to help you understand the SKU selection, the sites that you want to select to enable a BOPIS program, and how you plan for partner integration to make sure that there's a seamless flow of information and effective communication in order to keep all the entities in line and operating in a synchronous way. So my call, I think our collective advice is lean on those that you currently depend on. They've done this before. This isn't new in the space of retail. And a company like TI, we have the tools and the resources to walk beside and help in each of those planning phases, clicking those solution sets together. So while it sounds daunting and it sounds like a lot of data analysis, it is. The good news is there's absolutely a framework, and there are partners out there that you can lean on to help with that planning phase as you move into execution. This is a time, and this is in a supply chain environment where partnerships will carry us forward as we learn new things and put different programs in place to match the evolution of client behavior. So lean on your partners. They've got the tools and the experience to help you in the planning phase.
Yeah, I mean, in saying it's kind of I think the quote is, plans are worthless, but planning's indispensable. And so you have to be able to react. And, between Sachin and Carl, y'all fit on a lot around visibility and communication. first you have to be able to see what's going on. You have to be able to see those customer orders, where they are. You've got to know where your inventory is so that you can react to those orders. But then you've got to communicate. We've talked about partnerships, and whether it's a 3PL, whether it's a vendor, whether it's internal departments within your company, you've got to provide visibility to them, and you've got to be communicating. These sorts of things, they're not just going to happen. You've got to monitor, you've got to look at them as you move into the execution phase, because you've got to be able to react. And Carl, you want to kind of kick us into execution about how you're actually going to do this going, as orders start to flow in?
Yeah, I certainly will, John. And one of the things that I'll speak to as we move in and start talking about execution is the importance of visibility and communication. So the information flow precedes the physical flow of goods. And being able to pulse that unique demand signal for a BOPIS order from point of demand when the customer places the order all the way upstream in a more material way that provides a higher level of visibility, but also recognition that that information packet has flown through. And people have seen it and understood the importance and what it means, and the fact that it needs to be handled a bit differently is critical. And you're talking about systems connectivity, and then just plain old-fashioned communication around, hey, this is happening. So that alignment and that communication are foundational blocks to the execution layer of enabling a BOPIS strategy for your business. So I can't stress enough the level of importance, and we get hung up a lot on systems integration. And yes, integration is easy from an information flow perspective, but it draws on some of the most constrained resources in any organization, and those are IT resources. Those IT plans are carefully crafted with the specific IT objectives laid out for the IT team. And when something like this comes in, it can sow discord, or it can disrupt the work that's already in place. So while systems integration is a critical component of making sure that demand signal is pulsed through all of the supply chain entities, there is no substitute for just talking and creating that forum and that environment where the partners can talk on the regular, especially in the planning phase, as Sachin talked about, and as you're lining up the communication and visibility components, so you can see, test, and understand together. And you've got that redundant communication information flow that supplements any integration work that's done. So do you need systems integration and a heavy IT lift to stand this up and enable it? It helps, but it's not a requirement to make it work. Does it enable it in a more elegant way and make it bulletproof? Absolutely it does. But you can crawl, walk, and run in standing this up. And as Sachin mentioned, understanding your SKU strategy and your location strategy, and then putting the process in place, crawl, walk, run, rolling it out, you can build the communication and visibility channels and the information flow as you work on the systems integration piece. It's not a question of chicken or egg. You can do it, you can execute to it as you work on the full systems integration component, but it takes partnership, it takes planning, and all around that communication and visibility component. And that brings us right into execution. So the critical component of execution, as I mentioned, that visibility piece allows for that demand signal when that customer places the order for that product at that location. It needs to provide the visibility to the partners further upstream so they understand the nature of the order and they understand the predetermined process steps necessary to execute that order in a different flow. Sachin mentioned that a lot of the distribution networks and nodes were using truckload and LTL. Well, of course they were. They are the primary. But some of these orders will require a modal shift and a different behavior inside the distribution DC or from the manufacturer or a distributor's forward-facing client node. So understanding what that order is going to look like, how it's flagged through that communication and visibility infrastructure that you set up, even if it's phone calls, it enables the execution of a predetermined process for how that needs to be treated differently. That includes how it's picked. That includes the pickup time at that forward-facing distribution or supplier-facing location. The mode selection that's the most cost-effective based on the freight characteristics and pickup and delivery requirements. So understanding and being able to quickly analyze the load size, the equipment type, and then the rapid execution of the tender of that shipment to the carrier partner allows for the first two components of that. That's the prep of the shipment and rapid response to the order from the downstream retail location, enabling the rapid pick and staging of that product in a predetermined window. So if I have a BOPIS order that comes in, the SLAs for my distribution partner or from the shipping entity needs to be tighter than a traditional order, so it needs to be flagged differently. That work packet in the DC needs to be executed differently as an expedite out of that warehouse and staged as rapidly as possible. And then the transportation planning team can rapidly respond with both mode selection and dispatch to the carrier. The critical component is acknowledgement of the receipt at the DC node and acknowledgement of load acceptance from that carrier picking up at that location with confirmation of transit time. John talked about visibility. And the way to protect the customer experience in this environment where data and information is everything is to make sure that downstream customers can see and understand how that product is flowing through. In the absence of any data, customers will build their own narrative. Well, I don't see an update, therefore it must not be either being picked or in transit. So that communication and visibility piece needs to matriculate all the way through, all the way down to that end customer. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Most TMSs have mobile apps that provide that level of visibility. And with the tools and technology that a 3PL has, they can work to enable that visibility for those customers in that type of environment. So those first two nodes are critical, and both those entities understanding the nature of that order are critical to make sure that they move it outside the normal cycle time for a regular order, because it's not a regular order. The next component, or the next leg of the execution process for a BOPIS shipment, is the in-transit information exchange from the carrier partner as it moves towards that final destination node. It's a critical component. So known standardized transit times based on the proper integration and communication with those named carrier and known carrier partners are a critical component of that. And understanding how they interface and share information up and downstream is important, because again, as John alluded to, communication and visibility is key in protecting the downstream customer experience. So are there in-transit check calls? Is there a forecasted delivery that's updated through API? And is there notice of delivery at final destination by the carrier that provides notice and assurance to that end customer that, you know what, when I show up after work today, in between my commute home and getting home in order to make dinner for the family, I know that I'm not going to wait, that the product is going to be there with certainty, and it's going to allow me to maintain the routine that I planned when I woke up this morning. So that in-transit execution piece is critical in terms of how that carrier partner shares that information for the in-transit activity that moves it to final destination. And then obviously that final delivery component, yes, it arrived, but also it arrived damage-free and in full. This again provides that level of assurance and allows the retailer and the manufacturer to protect the customer experience and protect that brand loyalty. So the execution piece across the nodes really are all about understanding from each of the players in that execution space, the fact that order needs to be treated differently, that there's different SLAs and expectations on action relative to the order. It's not something that can go into an overnight work queue and then be batched the next day with everything else. There needs to be plans and visibility around the execution of that piece at each step in each node in the supply chain. And again, that visibility piece, yes, I've picked it, I had it in full, and it's ready. Then the rapid acknowledgement and communication to that facing carrier, they accept it, they're in transit to pick it up, then each of the check calls along the way to ensure that it arrives on time and in full at the desired destination is that critical execution layer. And a 3PL already has the inherent technology to allow for that. TMSs deployed in support of clients, set up with those, that integration, and through that visibility portal gives that information today. And there's all kinds of ways to be more effective from a communication and technology perspective in pulsing the data downstream. We all carry devices in our pocket that we use as a lens into the world around us, but we can also receive prompts to go in and look someplace. The U.S. Postal Service has taught us all how to do that, and we become very adept if something's sent us by the USPS and going into their website and seeing where stuff is at. And that acknowledgement of this is what's happened and the event tracker along with that is that critical component. Again, it ties back to communication and visibility, but the execution is coordinated around those demand signals from the client backup. So a 3PL can help with that. They have the tools and the technology to provide that level of visibility to each of the players in the ecosystem to ensure the effective communication of what's happening. But again, the call out is the careful planning and the communication of what's needed and how to treat that order, and then leverage the visibility tools that more than likely already exist in your supply chain in a different way to make sure that you're protecting the end customer experience through proper execution. Again, this isn't new. It's already being done today. It's just a reconfiguration of the processes to support a different type of demand flow and leveraging the information that's already captured and displaying it in just a slightly different way to a different constituent in the supply chain to enable this type of program. And this is what 3PLs have grown up doing.
Carl, you put a lot of focus on, that delivery to that last node and the communication, the visibility there. Charles, as you think about the execution on this, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that clients are facing that are relying on the parcel network for that last leg?
Well, the challenge is, and I said in another meeting, is that the logistics bubble has popped in 2020, and customers are seeking a new way to receive their packages in a timely and effective way. And BOPIS allows an additional way to do that. It allows them to have control over the delivery of that package, or more importantly, if they want to complete that transaction immediately, they have the ability to do so. And so, the digitally enabled customer today, they want that control, they seek that control. And it's important that they be able to have the decisions, capacity, and ability to make that change. So ultimately, it's important for customers and retailers to have inventory available so that the consumer is empowered in how to make that decision.
Yeah, and are the caps that some of the parcel carriers using causing a lot of angst with customers?
No doubt. I mean, I was in a conversation the other day where a shipper had been notified that both UPS and FedEx didn't want any of their packages, regardless of what they were willing to pay. And so for those specific packages that have been targeted by the shippers due to being large and bulky in nature, it's important that those particular packages are particularly available for consumers that want those and need them in an expedited fashion.
Cool. Thanks, Charles. So, we've talked about planning, we've talked about execution. If we're going back to that plan, do, check, now we're kind of that check phase of, how do you know what you're doing is being effective? Is it being good? And one way to do that is really understanding your total landed cost of that SKU at that final node. Sachin, you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing there with that?
Sure, John. So we have been working with a lot of our clients for almost last 8 months and helping them understand the cost added or the value added at each point of their supply chain. So as the product is leaving the supplier, how much it is costing us to take it to the next point, what kind of value add is adding into that node, and then moving forward. A lot of this is actually helping our customers to understand which areas in the supply chain they really need to focus, right? There are SKUs which you can sell profitable through your supply chain, and there are SKUs which needs a different kind of solution for fulfilling those demand needs. So our tool called margin management is a crux to this problem. That tool can look into different aspects of your supply chain and give you a true visibility of how it is looking at different levels. The tool enables you to have drill down.
Think we lost you there, Sachin. You were saying some good stuff. Okay. So, I'll kind of finish up with Sachin. You're really being able to understand which customers, which products are providing the biggest ROI to the to your company. It's really important to understand that so you know how to adjust. For example, you don't want to be shipping really large, bulky items halfway across the country. You want to look for an alternative distribution strategy on that. And kind of circling back to the visibility aspect of a buy online, pick up in store strategy, you need to be able to see that so that you can make adjustments on the fly. And one of the things that you can use to do not only support the analysis for it, but as Carl referenced, the execution is really leaning on your partners. And Charles, talk a little bit about the partnership aspect of a buy online, pick up in store strategy.
Absolutely, John, and quite frankly, Sachin and Carl covered a lot of great material already on the call, and so I won't necessarily repeat that. But what I will say and what I will add is, to land a BOPIS strategy with excellence really requires certain strategic partners, and each is vitally important for cost effectiveness and sustainability. And whether they specialize in technology, warehouse and fulfillment, inventory management, or they're even your transportation providers, each must understand their roles and responsibilities, what they're specifically accountable for, and what mutually agreed success looks like, and how each metric is measured, if you will. And we found that forward-thinking companies, they enable and they cement these partnerships with tools like value stream mapping for analyzing the current state, and more importantly, designing the desired future state. It's been our experience, and our clients tell us that often it takes a third party to bring the level of planning and partnerships together that are required to do this well. It doesn't happen automatically, and it needs to really be done with an eye towards specialization. And it's important that you have the skills in-house, or make sure that you have a trusted vendor partner like Transportation Insight.
And Charles, you mentioned a good point about value stream mapping. I was actually going to bring that up. That when Carl mentioned about redundancy, the communication and visibility, right? And also, Carl, you mentioned about how we should be cognizant about redundancy in our processes, right? This is one area, where we may have all the fancy tools and technologies and people in the team, but without understanding that complete, touch points and how they're integrated with each other is very critical for the success. And this is where, we have been, considered as very great value add by a lot of our clients who have been partnering with us to get onto this journey, is to bring in the aspect of value stream mapping, right? Just a simple exercise or a workshop of 2 or 3 days help you understand how different groups are performing and how the information is flowing. There are three components of information that flows in your supply chain. It is, your product flow, then you have your finance, and then you have technology, which is moving this portion in and out. And I recall a quote from one of my CEOs to his direct reportees is, "Hey, you all are doing great except me," because everyone was working in their silos and they were able to hit their metrics. But because they were not connected together and understanding the impact of one group making to another group, the company was not able to reap those benefits. And these are very simple things. It's like, say common sense is not so common, and that common sense is required to be looked into your business. So value stream process is a great value add, and that, as our customers has always commented us for this, that it truly opens their eyes onto the areas which they have not looked into. It could be as simple as, how you are receiving the product, how you're putting it onto this your shelves, and also how you're communicating to your 3PLs. You may have a technology part, but how that is being understood and being received is very critical. So evaluating those areas in your supply chain is very, very critical onto this journey.
So, John, both Charles and Sachin spoke to it directly, but to put a finer point on exactly the how, because that's really what we want to convey to the audience, is this isn't anything to shy away from. It's something to be embraced, and it's not new. It just requires a bit of different thinking and leveraging the partnerships and capabilities that you already have supporting your supply chain. Charles mentioned using a third party to facilitate. You want somebody that has the ability to see the whole, which is the second module in value stream mapping, and that can ask the right questions of the entities in your supply chain ecosystem and facilitate the discussion around the how-to. Sachin talked about value stream mapping, and that is a really good methodology. So value stream mapping, to Sachin's point, captures not just the physical flow of material around this unique distribution process in your supply chain, but it also maps the information flow that enables that physical flow through and the financial flows associated with it. And combining that with what was talked about earlier around SKU profitability by distribution channel, it gives the sales guys the assurance they can deliver on the commitments to the customer, and the finance team the ability to protect the bottom line. So a third-party entity like TI that's well-versed in using methodologies like value stream mapping can act as that facilitator for those supply chain entities, mapping out the way that it works, as well as the process cycle times to ensure that everybody can see together and know together relative to how long it needs to take, which you can establish SLAs off of, but also what the expectations can and should be from the end customer experience. So taking those entities in your ecosystem, bringing them together in a facilitated session that uses a process methodology like value stream mapping, with a facilitator that can ask the right questions to drive towards that output of how is it going to work, how long is it going to take, and what is my SKU profitability by and through that distribution channel, allows you to not only protect the business, but also engage the customers in a much different way. This is what 3PLs do all the time, and this is a core component of who we are in that space, and that's why we can speak to it with confidence. So having had the opportunity to help others through this same walk, We would encourage you to leverage the relationships that you have with your third-party logistics providers and leverage that experience and those methodologies to facilitate that exercise. We're partial to value stream mapping. It's universally known and widely used, and it gives you a very succinct roadmap on how to move from concept to execution quickly, following the pillars that we laid out. And as John had talked about partners, and Charles had called out the importance of those partnerships, and Sachin has talked about the roles that those partners play. It's also an opportunity for companies to take a step back and evaluate the partners that they've clicked together in support of their business strategies. A partner that's able to be responsive, to challenge the status quo, to take the inherent capabilities that they've built and potentially deploy those in a little bit of a unique way, leveraging other things that they have or tools that they have at their disposal to enable a different outcome or a different strategy within your supply chain, is a critical measure of whether you've built the right team, you've put the right players on the field to run your offense, if I can use a sports analogy. So this is a great time as you're evaluating those different channels to serve those clients, to take a hard look at the partners that you have and ensure that they've got the experience and the tools and competencies within their organization, both in systems and in resources, that they can deploy on your behalf, or where you can leverage that experience to drive that outcome. So when we think about what makes this work, yes, planning is important. Yes, execution is important. Yes, visibility and communication is critical, but it doesn't work unless you have the right players on the field. The partners that are willing to sit down and think together and solve together around a known challenge is what enables companies to execute with excellence for the first time. It's because they have experience in doing it, and these entities have probably worked together before on very similar solutions. But our advice to you is make sure that you bring someone in to facilitate that can see the whole and knows the right questions to ask to ensure that each of those entities are bringing the best of themselves and their capabilities together, so you can click this distribution strategy together effectively, and most importantly, protecting that end customer experience.
Yeah, I think Carl, as you've talked about, if there's anything that COVID has taught us, is that for your supply chain to be effective, all of your partners, whether it's a 3PL, whether it's a supplier, everyone you're touching has to be additive to your supply chain.
They have to be additive.
Yeah.
And they have to be flexible. Look, the only thing that's constant in this environment now is change and evolution. And we can see it in every aspect across every industry and in every node of a distribution network. The speed of evolution is continuing to increase, and making sure that you've got those partners, to John's point, in place that can match that speed of evolution and are willing to challenge the status quo and how things are done and how they use the capabilities they have to advance new objectives as opportunities emerge is critical. So we like to think that, survival of the fittest, the strongest and the fastest, the most intelligent are the ones that survive. But science and history have proven that not to be the case. It's the entities and the organisms that can react fastest to change and those change pressures that are out there that evolve to match the right now. Those are the ones that remain long runners in their space. And we see this as an opportunity for supply chains to evolve to support this particular distribution channel. So as you look through each of the pillars that we called out that enable a successful BOPIS program, it's the ability to react and respond quickly and evolve together to the ever-changing challenges that we're facing in supply chain is really what's going to separate those long runners, those that become wildly successful in this new environment, to everyone else that are the also-rans. So we think that that's a really critical lens to take a look through and evaluate if you've got the right people in place to support you.
So I know we're getting short on our time. Michael, do we have any questions that have come in?
Sure, John. A lot of great information there. Want to remind our audience, send us your questions. We're ready to answer them now. Just use that question panel there in the GoToWebinar screen. We do have a question in, and I'll throw it to you guys. Talked a lot about partnerships and the value there, but do you really have to have a 3PL to stand up a BOPIS strategy? Is it absolutely required?
So, Michael, I'll take a stab at that and ask for the guys to offer their opinion. But you know, this is an opinion question. So, my read on that answer, quite frankly, is no. You know, you don't have to have a 3PL in place to enable a BOPIS strategy, and it really depends on the capabilities of your organization. Do you have strong command and control of your systems? Do you have someone inside your organization that has the knowledge of the end-to-end flows and the competencies and capabilities of each of the partners in your supply chain ecosystem? Do they have the bandwidth from a tactical and strategic perspective to stand up and manage the execution of a project plan that requires that deep interface and engagement with each of those partners in said supply chain ecosystem? And if you have those things, then a 3PL is a nice to have, but it's not a critical have. The advantage of having a 3PL is they have the resources and the experience and the folks that have done it before and are doing it now. But most importantly, they have resources that have the bandwidth to fill the gaps in a client's organization and take on the additional workload to facilitate the changes necessary in each of the supply chain nodes to enable it. So is it a requirement? No. Is it a nice to have? Well, look at how much work your supply chain team is doing now and ask yourself if they've got the capacity to take on one more project. And that probably leads you to the answer. Guys, any input there?
I mean, I kind of echo what you said, Carl. You know, you want your business to focus on what you're good at. And if your core competency is not, you know, logistics and supply chain or you know, that aspect of it, get a partner that's going to, and it could be the analytics piece, it could be the visibility piece. You know, everybody is constrained from, you know, a technology standpoint, from a capacity standpoint. I don't think we talk to anyone that says, yeah, I've got way more IT bandwidth than I need. Or yeah, my analysts are twiddling their thumbs all day and coming up with new and exciting things. So, you know, you really have to evaluate what's core to your business, what are you really good at, and that's what you want to focus on, and use experts for the other things.
And to add on to John on that is, you know, yes, you know, people have expertise, but history is evident, you know, people who excel on those things are the ones who are hungry to do those things. And 3PLs like us are specialized and hungry on doing these things, right? When a company is trying to set up things, yes, you know, things can be set up by yourself, but in today's world, things are changing a lot, right? It's very hard for anyone to, you know, keep knowledge of all the things, be it like parcel, the changes happening in the parcel, or NPL, or in, you know, truckload business. So getting an expert opinion always helps. It helps you avoid the problems that you may run into, and they already have the insight to help you avoid those things. So it's just, you know, if you want to, they say, like, if you want to walk fast, walk alone, but if you want to walk far, walk together. So having a good partner with you definitely helps. To your point, it's more of additive to your business strategy.
Sachin, that was so good. I wish I would have said it. You know, John,
I would only add that, you know, we're probably crazy about things that you're not crazy about. And then more importantly, we're not there to replace the team. We're there to complement the internal team. And
that's right.
so those particular retailers that find themselves short on bandwidth, or even perhaps, you know, short on resources, it makes sense to partner where appropriate.
More great information from our panel. We do have another question that have come in, gentlemen. I'm going to throw it right at you. Can you speak to how drone deliveries will have impact on final mile deliveries for retailers, and how is the transportation industry preparing for this new trend?
Well, that's a great question, and I can answer it as a almost 50-year-old dad. I try to fly my kids' drones, and all I do is smash them into the ground or the house and have to replace them. So I'm hoping that the technology advances a lot more rapidly than what it is now. I do think, we mentioned it earlier. It's kind of a cheeky response, Michael, but in all sincerity, we know that change and technological change is rapidly increasing. The speed of change is a constant, and any business periodical you read, there's always articles in there about that. And the supply chain space is no different. So it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And there's huge constraints, as Charles alluded to, on that parcel side for last mile with the increase in e-com activity that's out there. That piece also is in every supply chain rag. And the old adage, necessity is the mother of invention. There is a necessary evolution in that last mile component. Now, will it be drones? Will it be a different type of crowdsourced delivery for that last mile? It's hard to predict what that will look like, but we will see evolution in the near term for that last mile component. And that's why we spoke and we feel so strongly about the importance of strong strategic partnerships that can leverage what we're seeing together and make plans to integrate that emerging capability together. So whether it's drones or whether it's a fleet of soccer moms and dads in their spare time between picking the kids up to school and dropping them off at practice, picking a couple of residential delivery loads up at a forward-facing DC, it will be an evolution that looks and feels like that. And I think, quite frankly, that future is probably multifaceted. So we'll see many things emerge to fill the gap in that last mile component. And I do think that we will see drones play a role in that. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
I hope they're better pilots than I am.
And to add on to that, is that yes, drones are advancing in delivery mechanism, but this also goes back to to the point of planning aspect. And the reason I'm trying to bring this up is drone delivery or parcel delivery or Uber delivery, they are like one of the many tools that are available to fit in your supply chain strategy, but that is not one tool cannot fulfill all your needs, right? So this is where planning comes in. Understand what specific tool can help us achieve, right? A very simple example is, yes, drone can be good in small parcel deliveries, right? But what about when you are a distributor who has different kind of products, right? So part of those could be delivered by drone, but other two products could not be. So thinking through those things in advance and understanding, what kind of strategy we need to have so that we can use the best of the breed solution is very important.
Great information, guys, and we're approaching the top of the hour, so we're going to conclude this Transportation Insight Digital Master Series event. Thanks very much to our panelists for sharing a lot of great insight. For more information or to reach out to our supply chain masters, use the contact information you see on the screen. Also visit us online at our website. That's transportationinsight.com. You can access more about our solutions, our blogs, our resource guides, including, of course, the BOPIS resource guide. It's called the BOPIS Revolution, Navigating the New Never Normal. It focuses on the strategies we've discussed today. And of course, be sure to register for our next digital event. You can find out about it at the website as well. It's our Parcel Roundtable with exclusive analysis of the 2021 general rate increase. Reserve your seat today for November 5th. That webinar is going to be visiting the resources section of our webpage. Just check it out at the digital event series. You can click and register for any of our upcoming events. Whether your business is large or small, Transportation Insight has a solution for you. We can help you control cost, manage risk, and improve customer experience. On behalf of our panelists and Transportation Insight, thank you for joining our broadcast. May you master the remainder of your day.